Hi, my name is Lavinia Osbourne of Butterfly Wealth Creation, and today I have the privilege of interviewing Mr. Dominic Frisby of MoneyWeek.com, or the magazine itself, MoneyWeek. MoneyWeek is the UK's #1 best-selling financial magazine, and I have been subscribed to it for a number of years now, and it informs me of what is going on in the national and international economic and financial world, and I recommend it to anyone who is listening and watching this right now. So, following and reading that magazine, Mr. Dominic Frisby is a commentator on gold for that publication, and I had the honour of meeting him a couple of weeks ago at the Money Show, where he was part of a panelist talking about gold. So please stay and watch this short video interview with Mr. Dominic Frisby. Good afternoon, Dominic.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to have this interview with me.
My pleasure.
Thank you. It was great meeting you at the Money Show event a couple of weeks back.
Yeah.
As you know, I am an advent reader of MoneyWeek, which is how I first found out about you. And since that time, I've been following your your articles and blogs and videos online.
Okay.
And I really appreciate you taking the time out to do this video for me and my viewers.
Well, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, so the first question is, tell me, how does someone with a degree in dramatic arts become an authority on gold investing?
Well, I wouldn't describe myself as an authority, but you know, I still work. I come from a theatrical family, and I still, you know, I do voiceovers and various other things for a living, so I still do all of that. But I've always been very interested in economics, and in the kind of about 2004, 2005, I had a bit of money and didn't entirely trust a fund manager to manage it, and I always thought property was a bit overpriced for what it was, certainly in this country. And so I just began reading and reading and reading, and then the more you read about gold, the more interesting it becomes. And the whole China story is very interesting as well, by that, you know, the growth, the shift of power from west to east, and the emergence of a new empire and all that. And the more I read about it, the more interested I became in it. And I had a little podcast, and I interviewed a lady called Mary Somerset Webb on that podcast, and she was the editor of MoneyWeek, and she said, oh, actually you'd be a really good person to come and write for us. So that's how I started writing for MoneyWeek anyway. Okay,
that's awesome. So it just goes to show that you have a contact with someone, you have an interview, and you just don't know where it's going to take you.
That's the way the world works.
Exactly. Okay, so as you stated, you said that you had a big interest in gold, more so than commodities. So what is it, because gold is a commodity, so what's the difference? Where do you draw the difference?
Well, commodity basically just means thing, and so yes, gold is a thing, but most commodities are things which have a use. You know, I don't know, cotton, for example, is obviously used in clothing, and sugar is used in the food industry, we eat it, and metal or base metals we use in industry, and gold has pretty minimal industrial use. It's used in a few electrical applications and also in teeth, but essentially gold's only use is as a means to store wealth, and so in that respect it's different to most other commodities. Most other commodities that have been produced have been used and no longer exist, whereas most of the gold that's ever mined, even if it was used for jewellery, still exists somewhere in the world.
Okay. Why do you think people, or let's say individuals in this society, because I do know in other countries such as Russia and India and China, their governments actually promote their citizens to purchase gold.
Yeah.
Why do you think in this society it's so close to, one, becoming financially savvy and purchasing gold, particularly with the markets looking the way imploding the way that it is at the moment.
So are you saying why are other governments interested in having their citizens own gold and our government isn't?
Exactly.
Well, I don't know why that is, but I suspect it's because we've had a stable currency for a long, long time, and we've had a stable currency for a long, long time, and so there's not really been that much need to own gold. We've had a sort of gradual decline in the purchasing power of our currency rather than hyperinflationary collapses which have occurred in Asia in the late 1990s, Argentina and so on. So I think the main reason I would suggest is ignorance. That's why our government doesn't promote its citizens owning gold is ignorance. I don't think there's a conspiracy against gold by our governments.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, the Chinese, there's definitely an agenda there where they are encouraging their citizens to buy gold, whether that's because they see some sort of monetary Armageddon coming, or more likely they just think it's a good thing to own. And maybe the government, I haven't really studied it, but maybe the Chinese government actually make a bit of money every time a citizen buys gold.
Right, okay, that's interesting. Thought, yeah, there's always someone benefiting from something.
Well, usually, I don't think they're going to do it out of altruistic means, but maybe they are.
Yeah. Well, they're talking a lot now. I've been reading MoneyWeek, obviously.
Yeah.
They're talking about how China is moving from boom to bust. What's your thoughts on the whole China scenario?
I don't know. I mean, you can't argue with the demographic argument, which is that there are just so many Chinese. I think they've got a major problem coming because of the single child policy, and there do seem to be too many young men and not enough young women. And when that generation gets old, when the current generation gets old, there aren't going to be that many people to look after them. So they've got various demographic issues, but just the sheer numbers of them make the commodity story a very compelling one. But having said that, in the shorter term, by that I mean the next 18 months or so, there are entire cities that appear to have been built that nobody is occupying. So that is incredibly wasteful, and usually Mother Nature has a way of correcting artificiality like that, and in the form of some kind of economic bust. And so if that happens, then the China story could get ugly. But I think looking at the longer term, and by that I mean, I don't know, a 50-year picture, there's no doubt that China and India are among the next great superpowers of the world, and that the West is in decline. And if you look at the emergence of the United States in the 19th and early 20th century, they had several busts on their way to becoming a superpower. So even if China were to have a big bust, and it probably will, it wouldn't be unusual in the evolution of an empire. And even if you look at the internet now, all the things that the dot-com nutters said in 99, 2000 about the internet changing our lives, they were all right. The internet has changed our lives, and we spend more and more time using it, and it has in all sorts of ways that nobody actually foresaw. But nevertheless, there was still a whopping great internet bust in the year 2000. So these things happen.
Okay, thank you. So what are your thoughts on gold now? Because there's two sides of there's two sides of the gold kind of argument at the moment. Those who are saying that gold is overvalued and wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, and others who are saying it's still worth investing because of the economic decline in the Western world. So what are your thoughts? I mean, just to add on to that, they talk about deflation, that the UK is going into deflation, and when that happens, everything goes down. So that means gold is also going to go down. But other people say no, deflation is a way to preserve your purchasing power. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think just starting with the inflation-deflation argument, everyone gets terribly hung up about that, and they all get into a lot of rows with each other, and the rows get very heated, and nobody actually agrees on what the definition of inflation and deflation actually is. So I'm always very wary about using those words without a prior definition. But do I think everyone should own gold now? Yes, if you don't own any gold, I would buy it. We're talking in late November 2011, I happen to think that gold probably won't go to new highs for another 6 months or maybe even a year, because it went a little bit crazy in this summer, making a high of 1920 in September, and usually when it gets a little bit ahead of itself, it did that in May 2006 and it did it in February 2008. Usually when that happens, it takes about a year of consolidation before it breaks, or even 18 months before it breaks out again. I hope I'm wrong, but so I don't see new highs anytime soon. And there's kind of two ends of the gold market. There's people who've got their gold bars buried in the garden, and that's kind of physical end of the market. People don't trade, they just sit on it. But there is also a highly speculative paper end of the market. I mean, I know loads of people who are spread betting gold all the time. I know people, there's all sorts of derivatives and futures and everything else, and in a broader market correction it's pretty easy to close those positions, and because they are derivatives of gold, the gold price falls, even if, as was the case in 2008, more and more people were actually buying physical bars. Even though the gold price was falling, dealers reported unprecedented levels of activity. So I don't see gold breaking out to new highs anytime soon, but I don't see it collapsing either. I think there's a pretty strong floor under gold at about 1600, and if you don't own any, I would I think it's worth owning some, because looking at the bigger picture, I see the only solution to this huge, great financial apocalypse that is bearing down on us is a dramatic upwards re-evaluation of gold in relation to everything else. Yes, gold's gone from $250 to $1,700 an ounce, so you're not catching the bottom, but I don't think the party's anywhere near over.
Okay, that's really sound reasoning and advice. So you talked about derivatives and futures, so obviously we're talking about paper gold there.
Yeah.
So do you think that via that vehicle that gold is being manipulated in the markets in regards to prices?
Again, I don't think. I think there are people. Well, everyone's trying to manipulate. Everyone who's playing the market is trying to manipulate. I own gold, and so I like gold, and so I write about gold in MoneyWeek magazine. So you could argue that I'm manipulating the gold price because I'm talking the market up all the time. So to that extent, there's manipulation everywhere. But there's also some very well-researched arguments by various companies, GATA and various organisations I should say, that argue that there is a systematic attempt to repress the gold price. Now, it's very possible, and their research is a lot more thorough than mine, but my attitude is, well, if governments are systematically repressing the gold price and gold goes up 20% every year, then long live government suppression.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so do you purchase physical or paper gold, or both?
Bits of both, really. Over the recent months I've been buying some physical gold because I get a little bit jittery every now and then. I got very jittery. In 2008 I went to the cash and carry and bought 1,500 quid's worth of beans and rice and various other emergency supplies, because I really thought the proverbial was going to hit the fan, and that was pretty much, I mean, I've eaten through all of the stuff that we bought, but it was still probably 1,500 quid wasted. Actually, maybe it wasn't as much as that, but anyway, I went down to the place in Tooting, to the cash and carry in Tooting down the road, but I wasn't the first person to do it.
Yeah. You're not going to be the last.
No, and there's an Indian comic friend of mine who does a whole routine about his dad hoarding goods. So it's quite an Indian thing, I think. But yeah. So anyway, I was hoarding a load of goods, and this time I wasn't sure about the contagion spreading from Europe, so I bought some physical gold as a little bit of insurance against that. I don't regret it. But yeah.
I think that sounds like a wise move. There's so many things that I want to ask you, but my final two questions. Do you think that gold will play a more prominent role in the world monetary system going forward?
No doubt.
Yeah? In what way? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'd be very surprised to see, people going into Tesco's with a gold sovereign to buy their weekly grocery shop. But I do think that it's very likely that if governments carry on printing money and we get this kind of out of control expansion of the money supply that's been going on, if it continues, the imbalances between the very rich and the very poor are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. We're going to get less productive in the West. There's going to be more and more grave social consequences, and it all points towards a monetary implosion of some kind, a monetary bust of some kind. And the system of money that we use is gravely flawed, this fiat currency system where governments have the power to issue money. It's gravely, gravely flawed. It's not a natural way to be, and so I see some kind of revolution taking place, whether it's the people rising up or the market forcing it or whatever it is, and gold will return to its historical role as money in whatever emerges from that monetary bust.
Okay. And any final words of advice or thoughts from the great Dominic Frisby?
Well, I certainly wouldn't describe myself as great. And what do I think? What have I learnt about the world recently? I've got a theory about the world that you get yourself into a lane, and by that, if you can picture a motorway, the fast lane, the slow lane, the hard shoulder, the medium lane, and once you're in a lane, it's very hard to you get into certain habits, you have certain people that you mix with, you get fixed in certain ways, and often you're not particularly happy in the lane that you're in. And it is possible to shift lanes if you are conscious of you just do things a little bit differently, break habits, change. If you're not content with where you are, just start doing things a little bit differently, just go and do different stuff, leave your job if you need to. Stuart Lee says, the secret of happiness is to do something completely different and unexpected, and stuff just happens when you do.
Yeah, it's so true, and I can say that from my own experiences. Final question. What books would you recommend to the readers?
To read
viewers?
About gold?
Yeah, to read about gold.
The best book on gold is a book by James Turk and John Rubino called The Collapse of the Dollar.
Okay.
It was written a few years ago. It was proved prescient, but it's informative, it's comprehensible, and it is essential reading for anyone who wants to know about gold.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much again for that. That was a great interview, and I look forward to sharing it with my readers and bloggers.
Okay, well, I hope they enjoy it.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. So there you have it, Mr. Dominic Frisby talking about gold. Some of the things that he touches upon is the fact that there is going to be a financial implosion, and gold is still a very relevant and secure way of protecting your finances. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Thanks a lot. Lavinia Osbourne of Butterfly Wealth Creation signing out.